Cars. From the studio who was releasing some of the biggest hits during the early age of mainstream computer animation, who would have guessed that at the time, their next big franchise in the league of Toy Story was a movie that's all about cars? The theme is entirely about cars, all the characters are cars, even the title is literally just Cars! And yet, with that kind of straightforward simplicity, it launched an entire generation to grow up with Lightning McQueen and become one of Disney's biggest animated enterprises where the merchandising alone makes billions. However, if there is one thing that I must confess in relation to this iconic picture, I never really cared much about cars. Allow me to explain. When the movie initially came out, I just started my teen years and I've never been a car person, so this was my first Pixar film that I looked at it and went, eh? And the only reason that I did eventually watch it was to prepare myself to review the sequels, which I find the third one to be just okay. I mean, it's fine as is, and it is a nice conclusion to the franchise, but compared to the other Pixar films, I'd still place it amongst their weaker movies. As for the second film... Actually, let's not talk about the second film. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I look down upon the franchise. In fact, there are some things from Cars that I do enjoy. I think Cars Land in Disney California Adventure is great. And I'd even put Radiator Springs Racers among my favorite Disneyland rides, and I was surprised to find that I had a lot of fun with the Disney Plus short series Cars on the Road. Seriously, they gave the show a small extra dose of craziness that was never in the films, and it helped create what I think is the best animated content from the franchise.
There's thousands of things to see,
but just the tiniest little taste of death.
Oh dear mother.
But then again, it has been a long time since I've seen the original, so maybe there's a chance that my thoughts may change and see something in here that I haven't seen before. I mean, at least for me, that's kind of the personal point of this review. In fact, to really get myself ready for this review, I decided to be like McQueen himself and got me a sponsor. Where Lightning has Rust-eze to get him going on the track, I got Magic Spoon. Now, this isn't any ordinary cereal here. This is a cereal made to be a blast from the past, where you can feel young again with that awesome taste you love, and have a lot of protein, 0 grams of sugar, and no gluten, grains, or artificial flavors. Now, I'll admit that I'm a major cereal fan, and they sent me their 4 flavors to try out: cocoa, frosted, fruity, and peanut butter. So I put them all to the test to see which one I like the best.
Oh, that's lovely. Oh yeah, this here is the kind of cereal I like. Oh yeah. Okay, so I've tasted all 4 of them, and if I have to pick one winner out of them all, I think I gotta go with Fruity, because that's the one I feel like I can go and eat this every day and I will be good. A very close second, though, worth mentioning would be Frosted. That one is also very lovely. It has the right amount of sweetness. So honestly, I would definitely go for like both of these, but my personal favorite has to be the fruity one.
And honestly, if I switch up my cereal habits to this, then that's gonna be a big win for me, because then my diet will have way less sugar and more protein. Which I think I really need that. I probably eat more sugar than I want to confess. But anyways, if you feel the same as me, then Magic Spoon's got you covered. If you go to magicspoon.com/animat or scan this handy QR code and use the promo code ANIMAT, you'll save $5 off of any order you make. And if you're not 100% happy with what you ate, then Magic Spoon will give you a refund and won't ask a single question about it. Come on, you can't ask for a better cereal. It makes your mouth happy, it makes you happy, and it gives you enough energy to blaze through Route 66. So now that we're watching McQueen's first visit to Radiator Springs, does this movie deserve an honor as prestigious as the Piston Cup? Or will this feel more like someone did something in my cup? Let's find out. The story. As the movie was built to make it look like it would be all about racing, that's only meant to be as a draw to bring audiences in. Yes, there is some racing that happened, and the lead character is a race car, but that's not the main theme of this picture. It's actually something else that takes the highest priority. Unfortunately, a setback from this is that it's even higher than the storytelling. One of the weaker elements of Cars is that the story itself is relatively plain. It's pretty much the typical arrogant jerk who was at the top of the world, but then was thrown down to where they were left with nothing and now has to learn to grow a heart in order to sacrifice their selfishness so that they can make new friends to be truly happy. It's the same kind of narrative that was done before, like in The Emperor's New Groove, and the same that filmmakers continue to use afterwards, like in Klaus.
Throw him out of here, Sheriff. I want him out of my courtroom. I want him out of our town.
Okay, so maybe it's not the most original plot that was written at Pixar. But of course, execution is key. Is there something in here, other than the Cars theme, that makes itself stand out to be uniquely engaging? Well, I don't think so. The thing with these stories is that they are dependent on the likability of the characters and the new environment that the leads find themselves in. In the case of Cars, the cast is not really a strong group in terms of memorability or even charm, with a few exceptions, of course. Even the humor didn't help to improve the situation, as they can range from being decently cute that can get a chuckle, to getting a little weird with its Cars concept.
We're like your biggest fans! Ka-chow!
I love being me.
Oh, I get it. They're flashing to McQueen. You know, they expose their flashers to him, just like how girls take off their tops and... Did I mention that this was directed by John Lasseter? I'll get more into this later, but a part of what makes it hard to get invested with the feature was how the arrogance of Lightning McQueen was a little too strong during the first half, making it pretty tough later on to warm up to him, since he had this attitude that deserved to have his goals taken away from him for the sake of karma, while most of the rest in Radiator Springs don't do a whole lot to counterbalance that with their one personality trait.
It looks awful.
Now it matches the rest of the town.
But I know that I have yet to fully clarify my earlier statement. If the story isn't really the main focus here, then what is taking the highest priority? The answer is to be a tribute. When the Pixar team developed the movie, they wanted to pay homage to Route 66, where instead of taking the highway or the intersection to get to your destination, you go down a different path in the American road and find yourself in quirky stops that consist of small towns and one-of-a-kind people.
Cars didn't drive on it to make great time. They drove on it to have a great time.
And that's what Radiator Springs is supposed to do. It's to honor those people and those towns who make American road trips feel more unexpectedly special. And that's what I would say is the best thing about this movie. It's getting to know Radiator Springs and to visit this little town to hang out with its inhabitants and hear their stories. See, that's what I mean that this isn't really a movie about racing, because the heart and the most memorable aspect is Radiator Springs. In a way, the story of the movie is a lot like a pit stop. It's not meant to be the destination of your trip, it can be a bit inconvenient, and the path to get there can get unpleasantly bumpy, but you do gain a little extra experience that can spice up your story. The animation. When Pixar was given the mission to make a movie that's all about cars, they understood to do so literally. This is a film where the entire world is dominated by cars. And it's not just the people who are cars, but also the animals, the bugs, and even elements of the environment are meant to be shaped like a car. As it is a Pixar movie, they were given a budget big enough to make their world look grand, and had more than enough space where part of the experience when watching the movie is to look out for what got turned into an automobile or what got adjusted so that it could accommodate to a sentient car. It's worth noting that, compared to its follow-ups, it doesn't really explore a whole lot of that idea, since most of the film resides in Radiator Springs, but considering that this is the franchise's debut, I won't be pulling points off of that, and for what it did, it's still pretty creative, and the stuff that aren't associated with cars, like the 1960s aesthetic of the town or the natural places, are still both well-crafted and immersive. But then you have the cars themselves and how they come to life. For the most part, I think the team at Pixar did a nice job of finding that middle ground of building these new type of cartoon characters that can move around and clearly express their personalities, while also staying true to the functions and limitations of a real car. It opens up to many possibilities of how these characters interact with each other in a way that feels believable. Sure, maybe this concept was already done in some older cartoons, but in those, they're a lot more rubbery and feel more like they're just toons no different than Mickey or Bugs. But in here, the film does emphasize that they are actually cars built out of the same materials like any real car would. Even with those big eyes on the windshield and a mouth on the bumper, the illusion that they are living cars remain intact, no matter how boisterous their personalities can be.
Luigi? On your mark, get set. Uno for the morning, due for the show.
However, as great as these designs are, I'd argue that maybe they work a little too well. So much so that I sometimes question the anatomy of these characters. First off, am I the only one that feels uncomfortable when they stick out their tongues? Like, if they have a tongue, do they also have internal organs that are also organic than mechanical? Also, I gotta note that the movie can sometimes be intense for the world that it established. The racing scenes at the beginning and the end can be gripping to see McQueen on his way to get the Piston Cup. But then there are times when they get very violent, and we see the cars get severely damaged on the track. Not to mention how their condition, or that their bodies are literal cars, can be used for some of the gags.
Fred, thank you. He knows my name. He knows my name.
Hey look, his skin is deteriorating and his jaw completely fell off. Well, this just got dark pretty quick. I don't know, maybe I'm just overthinking it, and while I do think there are some things that feel off, there are other components that do make up for it, including the numerous of different cars that are featured in the film. Whether they be in Radiator Springs or watching the race for the Piston Cup, there is an admirable amount of vehicles that are featured with their own trait and color scheme, which helps the feature to be pleasing to look at with all the different colors that fill the screen and make each car distinguishable from the next. If there's one thing that this feature succeeds in doing, it's that the animation visually delivers a movie that's all about cars. Just don't think too much about it. The characters. Part of the experience when driving down Route 66 is to meet the locals along the way. And with all the unique cars that are featured throughout the film, you will absolutely encounter a lot of eccentric vehicles. But the only catch is that most of them will not make a notable impact. I've already mentioned this, but one drawback from this feature is that it doesn't have much great characters that contribute to either make the film more engaging to learn more about them, or contribute to strengthening the story. I'll say now that they're not bad characters, but I can't say either that they're the most memorable characters that Pixar had ever developed. But I will say that there is something to note that will make a certain group appreciate the feature more than others. If you're a fan of NASCAR or race cars in general, several people among the voices are actually significant personalities in the racing world, whether they be racers themselves, sportscasters, managers, or recognizable commentators. For that fan base, cars can also be served as a feature-length Easter egg hunt to find all the racing stars that appear in car form.
Hi, Lightning McQueen told me this was the best place in the world to get tires. How about setting me and my friends up with 3 or 4 sets each?
But in terms of the cars that we do follow, first there is Lightning McQueen, the hotshot rookie who is just inches away from becoming the new champion. If it weren't for certain instances that led him to getting stuck in Radiator Springs. Like I said before, he's the usual jerk who eventually grows a heart for his newfound community. But man, do they start him off quite detestable. During the first half, Lightning was the embodiment of selfishness, thinking that he could do everything by himself with no assistance, and too eager to just reject all of those who help him to become the big name that he is in favor of being the best. In fact, he pretty much looks down upon everyone, believing that he's too important to be amongst lesser-known cars. And it's that attitude that kind of kills the mood of the picture and leaves a bad first impression. It would have helped if the movie could be more playful with his ego and maybe make it more comical so that it's more amusing to watch, but instead, he's just genuinely too self-absorbed, and I find myself at times where he can be so bad that I'd rather root for Chick Hicks, even if he's just a one-note villain.
I mean, taking the race by a full lap? Where's the entertainment in that? No, I wanted to give the folks a little sizzle.
Sizzle?
And am I sure I don't have a crew chief? No, I'm not, because I'm a one-man show.
What?
Yes, I know that McQueen eventually turns around, but it's hard to wash off that spite that I had to endure. So even by the end where he's all good, I still had to debate with myself if he's proven that he was worth rooting for. As for the vehicles of Radiator Springs, again, their rules are meant to bring a little more life to the town than to have a significant part for the picture. There's Luigi and Guido as the Italian race car fanatics, Ramon, the body paint artist who loves to show off his work that he does on himself, Flo, the owner of the diner, Sarge, the army man who always argues with the town's hippie, Fillmore, Red, the shy fire truck, Sheriff, the town's policeman, and Lizzie, Radiator Springs' oldest resident. But then there are three others who stand out a little more, like Mater, the movie's main comic relief. I know his role isn't so admired in his later appearances, but in the first film, I was surprised to find that he was kind of charming. He's supposed to be the dumb redneck, but he's dumb in a way that he's obliviously naive and has this positive outlook where he's just enjoying life without much on his mind. It's from that where it results in some of the movie's more tender moments as he forms a bond with McQueen.
I knew it. I knowed I made a good choice.
In what?
My best friend.
There's also Sally, who is mainly the love interest that eventually falls for Lightning, but I'll give her that she did get me with the scene where they both were just driving, as she explains why she became a resident of Radiator Springs, genuinely clarifying the appeal of those small towns compared to big city life.
Well, that was my life, and you know what? It never felt happy.
Yeah.
And then there's Doc Hudson, the cranky doctor who always resents McQueen. However, the reason why is what makes him debatably the most fascinating character of the film. Without spoiling too much, he had a connection with racing, and the way he treats McQueen is like he's projecting how he feels about his own past and the way that he was treated that ultimately led him to leave the industry. He's not just some bitter old man, he's someone who has yet to come in terms with his past and accept what was a significant part of his life.
There was a lot left in me. I never got a chance to show.
As you drive by Radiator Springs, you will meet a few people that you'll share some nice memories with, but then again, there are others as well that you'll encounter that you'll either forget easily or make you wish that you took the interstate instead. I've honestly been on better drives than this one, especially coming from Pixar, but I can't deny that this was still a pretty smooth ride. No pun intended, but Cars is a prominent example of a middle-of-the-road animated feature. Definitely far from perfect, but still managed to come out with an experience that is okay. There are elements that show a lot of its rust, like the weak plot and a mixed bag of characters, But the creatively strong animation and the sense of community in Radiator Springs does make this a nice love letter to small American towns that also function as quirky attractions for road trips. For my recommendation, I'd say that considering how it grew into one of Disney's biggest animated franchises, it is worth watching at least once to say that you've seen it. But how you'll feel afterwards may vary. However, I will say that if you're someone who enjoys race cars or have an interest in cars, then I think you may have a higher chance of enjoying this feature more than others. Then again, you will have a higher chance of enjoying reviews like this if you give this one a like and subscribe to my channel. And you don't have to be a racing fan for that. In a way, my thoughts on this movie are a lot like my thoughts on cars in general. I don't really care a whole lot about them, but they do serve their purpose, and I guess that's fine enough for me. Hey guys, this is Animat, and I want to start things off by giving out a huge thanks to Gabriel Marquez, whose amazing support on Patreon allowed him to get some amazing rewards, including this one, where he got to ask me to review Cars. And after reviewing all 3 movies across the years, I think it's safe to say that I think the franchise as a whole is just fine. You know, all the movies, they're not great, and at best, they're just good. But I just think that, honestly, like, mix them all together and they're just okay. Even though that, personally, I'm not really into the Cars films as much as the other Pixar movies, and I do consider them to be amongst Pixar's weaker films, but still, though, they are harmless, they are decent at best, you know, they're just fine. But still though, like I said before, I do really like Cars Land, and I do really like Cars on the Road, so at least that's something. Alright, so with that said and done, I think it's time that we could go and conclude Cars, and we shall go on to our next review from the Animation Hat. And by the way, before I go and pick the next review, I would like to go and remind you that if you would like to be like Gabriel and you want to go and get some amazing rewards and support my work, but in terms of the rewards that you could get, including but not limited to seeing my videos before anyone else, then all you have to do is go to patreon.com/animat. But at the same time, if you would like to suggest an animated film you would like me to review and I would put onto the Animation Hat, then all you have to do is write me an email at animatsreviews@gmail.com. Alright, so, let's see, what do we got here? Who's gonna be our next film? Okay, I think I gotta clean up afterwards, yeah. I might have made a little bit of a mess. Ah, there we go! Okay, got it! Anyways, the next review shall be... Oh! Oh my god, yes! Oh, I love this movie! Okay, so, I think it's safe to say that, the next review is going to be a really positive one, but there is a reason why I'm actually excited for this, because out of all the films from this filmmaker, I would have to say that not only is this my favorite, but I would have to say that this, in my opinion, is Ralph Bakshi's best movie.
I don't care who you are, that's funny right there.